Well, welcome back to Metal Mayhem Garage. Today, we're working again on the '09 Dodge Caravan, but this time, it's smoking. I drove it home and it's smoking. Gray smoke. What does gray smoke mean? The internet says that's antifreeze. So if it's antifreeze, where's it coming from? Well, it turns out that the heater hoses that connect to all the antifreeze system, they have plastic connections. And the plastic connections get brittle and crack over time. Good thinking, Dodge. Why don't we do something about that and put some aluminum parts on it? That'd be a good idea. So where's all the smoke and leaking coming from? Well, I'll show you. If you get in here into the engine bay, you come right over your spark plug wires, and you look down here, there's a little plastic connection. Right
here. Not here or here so much, but right here.
Right here. Now, why they chose to make that out of plastic, I'll never know. It's a little Y shape, and there's another one right back there. Look at this honking thing. One of these is leaking all over the place. I think it's this one up here. But I'm going to replace them both because I already got the parts and they come as a set. Well, first, those lines are full of radiator fluid and we got to drain the radiator. So what's step number one of draining the radiator? Well, the first thing is we got to take this overfill thing off. And right now you can see my overfill canister is overfull. There's a maximum fill line and a minimum fill line. And this thing, I know it's hard to see on camera, but I think it's overfull. It needs to be emptied and cleaned out anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that. So you want to make sure that your van is completely cooled off before you start working on it. One way you can test that is to grab this heater hose right here. Make sure it's soft, pliable, it's not stiff or pressurized, and that it's cool to the touch. Now I'm wearing gloves today. That's because I'm going through some sickness, and I don't want any of this chemical stuff getting on me because radiator fluid is poisonous. So, gloves. But also I like to keep clean. Now the first step, because this jug just basically slides out of here, is that we got to disconnect this hose right here from the radiator. So make sure you got a bucket standing by. If it doesn't have fluid in it, that's fine. Sometimes they splish and splash, but this hose just pulls out of these two little tabs right here. And it's ready to be taken out. I like to let mine drip over the front. Any fluid comes out, it's fine. And the jug is simply on two clips that slide in. You can get in there and just pull on it, and it'll come right out. You might have to move some things that are in the way, but it just wiggles right out. Just like that. And though I thought it was full, it's actually quite empty. So we're going to get that out of the way. Down there where that jug was, you will find that right down here, the bottom of your radiator, is the drain plug. You can either unscrew this all the way or just a little bit and let it dribble all over. If you let it dribble all over, it's going to make a mess. But either way, we're going to drain it to where these heater hoses are not full of radiator fluid. So let's get on that. Now, as you can see, I've got this draining out pretty good. It's going to drain all over that little support down there, but your fluid is going to drain out, so make sure you have a drain pan handy. My plug, in particular, I just pulled it right out. It does have, I don't know if you can see it very well. Which side is it on? Right here on the end, a little hole that it'll come out. But it takes too long, so I just pull the whole thing. But you want to let that drain as much as possible. One thing that may help you let this drain faster is if you take the cap off the radiator. Just set it aside. To keep this with this, you'll know where they are. And it is really flowing now. Alright, now as you can see, we're down to just a drip left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put that plug back in there and seal all this stuff up and put it back together. Alright, so we're going to start with the petcock, or what some people just call the drain plug. And that's going to go right back in. Oh, by the way, there is a little plastic washer on here. Rubber washer, excuse me. Make sure you don't lose that. Seals everything up. Find a hole.
That's what she said.
Screws right in. Let's make it finger tight, and then an extra tweak. Now, the next thing that goes back in is going to be your cap. We do want an airtight system now. Later we'll end up filling this anyway, so we don't have to snug it on or anything like that. We just want to make sure we don't lose the cap, which for some reason doesn't want to go on. There we go. All right, once the cap is on, you're free to put your jug back on. But I want to clean mine out, so I'll be right back after cleaning it out.
A few moments later.
Now, before I go through the trouble of putting everything back together, one thing I am going to do is I am going to take this hose clamp off here connected to the radiator, which supplies the radiator to the rest of the engine. And the reason I'm going to do that is because this hose, though it turns and goes sideways here, it also goes down and in. And that means that there could be radiator fluid trapped all back up in here. So I want to undo this clamp right here and drain all that radiator fluid down there as well. Yeah, come on, stubborn. And sometimes these things get molded on there from heat and you might have to twist and turn at them to get off, but this one looks like it's going to come off pretty easy on us. Sounds pretty empty, but we're going to dump it just in case. And I'm glad we did, because you hear all that?
Niagara Falls, Frankie Angel.
That was the sound of not goodness. Alright, once that's fully drained, make sure your hose clamp goes back on. I'm going to hook that right back up. And when I put my hose clamps on, I always like to make sure that they're in a different place than they were last time. Put the hose on a little further and make sure that I'm on in the right place. That way I get a good seal. Just a little bit extra carefulness may go a long way. And remember, that's just a plastic housing in there, so you don't want to over tighten your hose clamps. That on there nice and good. One thing I am going to do, just to make getting to these hoses a little bit easier, you can see that there's a vacuum line going from your brake booster up to your engine here, and I'm going to just disconnect that and get it out of the way. Maybe I can just swing it around here. Yeah, that'll work good. Just to get it out of the way so I'm not reaching through it all the time to get to those hoses. So now we've got to get those hoses out of there. And the easiest thing to do would be to replace one at a time, compare them to our new parts, and make sure everything's going back in the same way. However, looking at it the way I am, I'm seeing that it might be easier to take all of them out and then put them all back in. So we're going to have to look at this a couple of ways and see if we can determine which is the best way to go about this. All right, just so you can get your papers in here and take a look at what I'm looking at, we've got to get to these hoses, which are all connected with spring clamps, and they connect way up in there to the heater core. Now it would be easy to just take them off one at a time, and that way I wouldn't forget. But that way, it's kind of hard to get everything in line. But I've also been looking at my new parts, and the way they are shaped, it's pretty doggone hard to mistake which one goes where. So I'm going to go ahead and take a crack at these, just pull them all off. So I'm just getting in here with a pair of pliers. These are spring clamps. You hook them on there and they pull right off most of the time. You might need to wiggle at them once in a while, but usually they're not too bad. Unlike these ones, which seem to be giving me a little bit of a hard time. I've got enough power in my meat hooks to do that. And what I'm doing is just wiggling them so that they're not on the pipe anymore, so I can pull it off the pipe. You gotta wiggle, wiggle, and I'm in a cramped space, so might take a bit. There we go. Finally came out. I'm gonna do that with all of them. Maybe do a little fast forward motion here through all that. All right, so with a little more trouble than I anticipated, those hoses are coming off. The problem is they're so stuck on my particular vehicle that it's taken some good old-fashioned horsepower to pull them off. One thing I found helpful is that when you do get your hoses, what you're gonna need is you're gonna need to clamp down on them like this, and you can try wiggling them off like this all you want, but it ain't gonna happen. What I found really helpful, instead of using a screwdriver, is using a pick with a 90-degree angle on it. And you can grab onto the other side of this and push or pull as needed to get that hose clamp to come right off. Then, just a little brute strength will pull the hose off the metal fitting in there. So I'm going to do the last couple here on camera so that you can see. And hopefully I won't knock my light over too bad like I've done over and over and over again. Try to get it down in there where you can see a little bit. But there's really no way to get a good camera angle way back in and up under there. So you're just going to see me fiddling, and eventually it'll come out. Oh yeah, one thing that does help is not have it on the small setting, have it on the large setting for your pliers to grab those hose clamps. Oh, clamp together. This would be easy with vice grips, by the way. All right, I'm gonna do this off camera because I need to get at a certain angle, and you're not gonna be able to see anything anyway. All right, we are down to our last hose clamp. There's this one on the base down here. You can kind of see it down there. And unfortunately, I have to have my body draped all over the engine so you can't see anything I'm doing. And believe me when I tell you, I am doing it. And they do come off. All right. You see, this is the new piece, complete with aluminum Y fitting, as you see here. And at the bottom, it has a quick disconnect with this little piece that comes out, which sticks right in the hose, just like that. All you have to do is push this onto the new pipe down below, like such, and it'll snap on. Some chucklehead who worked on my car before me went ahead and removed this section, so all it was just the rubber hose and no clamp. It was just stuck on there. The last person to work on this vehicle's heating system, by the way, was a professional mechanic. The only one I've trusted for years. And this is why I now work on my own vehicles.
Shame, shame. Know your name.
All right, I can tell you that after 2 hours of struggling, I did finally get these hoses back on here. And they are all on and properly routed, however you pronounce that, and connected to the right places. But I will say that these spring clamps are the dumbest invention ever. A regular hose clamp couldn't have cost that much more. And they are so much easier to work with. I don't know why car companies ever switched to these lame spring clips. Maybe they save some money. I don't know. But they sure are a pain to work with. So they're back on there. But you did see, right off camera, maybe you didn't see it, I did have to move the coil pack out of the way just to get leverage room. I'll go ahead and put that back on now. It's a real simple job. Well, I never even disconnected the wires. All you got to do is look at the alignment, and it just slides on over a couple of pins, one of which I took out to get a little better. Here, let me put you on the stand. I put a little BB blaster on the other one just to get it a little bit easier to put in. That just goes on there like that. Get my light out of the way. Oh, I did cover this with bubble wrap here, just because I kept crossing the battery terminals with my arm. Never shocked me, but came close. So now we just need to resituate our wires here, our wire holders, which is absolutely no problem. Everything's buttoned up, except for I got to put the overflow jug back in, reconnect that hose, and then fill it with radiator fluid, and of course connect the battery again. So I'm going to do that now. All right, reposition the camera, move some lights around so you can see it better. There are just some tabs on the back of these water jugs. And if you look down in here, you will see that there are some holes that those slide into. It just slides in there and pushes down. You would think it'd be screwed in place, but it doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. The only thing I'm going to do more is I'm going to connect this hose before I get started. That way, when it's time to reach way down in the engine bay to reconnect that hose, it is not such a problem for me. And it just slides on there just like that. This goes down in between there. It's like that, and you just got to find the holes and line them up to slide them in properly. I just got to line these up, and sometimes finding that hole is a little difficult.
That's what she said.
Alright, that's back in there. It's good to go. Everything's... Run my hose back up the right way here. And it goes into the radiator fill area. And then there's just these little clips it snaps into to keep it out of the radiator fan there. Now you notice I'm missing my top. That's because I washed out my jug. And I didn't bother to wash the cap. Which, okay, sure, make fun of me. But, there you go. Or rather, there you go. Perfect. I did disconnect our vacuum hose line for our brake assist, so I'm going to reconnect that. Now, what I noticed from doing all this work is that this van was actually a whole jug low on radiator fluid. And it probably burned all that off, which is why I saw the smoke. Alright, now that we've got everything all buttoned up and ready to go, battery reconnected, hoses all reconnected, everything's all set to go, I'm going to go ahead and fill it with antifreeze. Coolant, whatever you want to call it. Antifreeze plus water is coolant. Now, smart man will use a funnel. My funnels aren't really the right size, but I'll go ahead and try for you, if you like. This one's probably used for engine oil, but whatever. Maybe, if that'll stay. Nope, always causes a mess. I wish I had a good funnel. I'll just pour it real slow like. What's important to do every once in a while is to make sure that this isn't just going all over your garage floor. As every mechanic will tell you, if you've seen it once, you've seen it a million times, right? Am I right?
Am I right or am I right or am I right?
I'm right. I'm right.
Right.
Right. Just say I'm right. So, I happen to know that this engine, this radiator, takes more antifreeze than I've got, so I will be adding more later than what I already drained out earlier. And I did check, it is not going all over the garage floor. So there you go. Got to re-rain a little bit here. Okay, that went a little over the garage floor. As you can clearly see, it's not enough to fill it. They do sell really nice funnels on Amazon that have a stopper in them, but I'm plumb out. That's what I'm saying. Now, if you just sit here for long enough, it will all go down in there. In fact, it is ready to go right now. That stuff all needs to push through all the hoses and everything. Believe me when I tell you, that's not even nearly enough. I almost need a whole nother jug. And then you always want to make sure that your overfill canister, you want to make sure that's filled up to the minimum. Between the minimum and the maximum is best, but you don't want to go over max. I learned that one the hard way. Now, if this fan was good enough to run with that much in it before, it's good enough to run with that much in it until I can get some new stuff, which I will make a parts run tonight in my other vehicle and get some more. But I do want to fire this up just to burble out in the air pockets in the radiator and the coolant. So we're going to do that. So I am going to start it and make sure the stuff isn't running all over the floor. Not even a drip. And this does require quite a bit more antifreeze. If you look down in here, you will see there is still room for more antifreeze to be added down there. You want it right up to the top. I also want to look inside to make sure my hoses aren't dripping that I replaced. There's a little bit of smoke coming from over here. That might just be burning off what I spilled. So we'll have to keep an eye on it. We do got some smoke. I don't know if you can see that on camera. It might be coming from the headers. It might just be stuff that's on top of the engine, but if it's not, we'll have to examine that further later.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!